You're listening to Fellow Travellers with East of Moon. Welcome to Fellow Travellers, a podcast from East of Moon. We are an organisation that studies, experiments with, and develops the ways in which communities create together. My name is Josie Anne, and it's another review episode. This is where we take the time to look back over the conversations we've had thus far and reflect on the themes and ideas raised. For this, I was joined by my colleague Anna Marjankowska, a brilliant thinker and doer. You can find some links to Anna's projects and writing in the show notes. But for now, enjoy this episode of Fellow Travellers. Hello, Anna. Welcome to the podcast. Do you want to just introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I am Anna Marjankowska, and I am an in-house labor and community organizer.
Yes.
I am very happy to make this episode with you. And Josie, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I don't really introduce myself, but I have been working with East of Moon for the last 6 months, and my background is in community development, cultural projects, youth work, event management, journalism, bit of everything, jack of all trades. But I've been really enjoying working on this project, particularly with the podcasts, and
you
just
produced
having
so much content lately.
Yeah,
this is just like everything is so alive, like social media so alive, websites so alive, and that makes such a change when you are working in this community laboratory or innovation laboratory, as East of Moon is, connecting all of those people and producing those conversations, just having them recorded, such a treasure. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. I'm really excited to talk about them with you because I think this is a big part of it. I kind of go away with these conversations and I'm like, wow, amazing. And my head is so full of ideas, and I think this is the point of having conversations like this, is that we are so prone to work in our bubbles, and we're each in this kind of grander scheme of community work. We're kind of focused on our specific community so much, and we're trying to look at the challenges that we face there, the joys that we have there, but we're not sharing them with different types of community, and we're not having these wider interconnected ways of thinking. And then I have these conversations and my brain is full of things. Now we get to have this conversation about the conversations. It's kind of meta, but then actually you're really synthesizing.
Yeah.
Then, I don't know, you're getting to the heart of something.
I really like the first sum up you did with Artnar, because that was, I really like the way that, we are producing some content. There is like how many episodes? 1, 2, 3, 4 that we're gonna sum up today. So it gives us space to rethink everything that happened, all those situations and meetings you had. Also, I want to ask you, this is like the second review. I want to ask you about your evaluation. Is there something that changed in the way that you prepared and curated this group of people? What changed from the first episodes you've recorded, and how this format is transforming right now?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. Maybe not on the surface level for people, but the way I conduct these conversations and how I start to get excited for them in advance has changed. I think when you start any new project, you don't necessarily, you come up with a structure around it. You come up with the idea, the premise, but you don't really know in practice what that means until you start doing it. And it wasn't maybe until 3 episodes in where I was like, oh, this is what this podcast is about. And I think it's interesting. I brought this up with Artna the other day. We were talking about my first interview with Chris Marcatelli, who's wonderful. And I really love that conversation. I still think it stands up. But I think the way that I would interview him now, the conversation I would have with him is different because of the other conversations I've had. And I think my hope for this is that this is a continual dialogue, and that I know that other people who've come on as guests on the podcast have then gone and listened to other people's episodes and have found things that are relevant to their own communities. And that's kind of, to me, that's what it's all about.
The Innovation Week is coming up.
May.
I'm gonna wave something here, and the question that we're gonna tackle on Innovation Week as East of Moon and in Artnar's lectures is gonna be why. So, what is your why now? In the podcast?
Why I'm doing this? Yeah, I think it's to find the through lines between community, creativity, and innovation in really diverse examples of those things. So just looking at the people that we've spoken to thus far, and we're going to delve into today, even just today we have a civil servant doing innovative things in the UK government. And then we have a master's student who's extremely passionate about folklore. We have someone who started a fringe festival in a tiny Nordic nation. And then we've got someone who's involved in a political community that's got a lot of challenges. On the surface, these people are all so different and they're coming from such different perspectives. But actually, I think as we get into this, we'll find there's a lot of crossover, a lot of similarities. The themes are very strong. So my why is to just I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I don't want other people to be reinventing the wheel. I want us to find these overlaps, these parallels between our communities and use them to actually find strength within community organising as a whole.
Nice.
Let's dig in. Let's start with Brendan. He was the first interview from this set that we're going to look at. I'm going to play a quote from him that I thought was interesting, and we'll have a chat about it.
I know government can sort of seem like a closed door, but there are lots of problems that need solving in government, and I'm very, very confident that arts-based approaches have value to give, kind of thing, in that context. So one example is that when you have a kind of a new policy area to explore, it's very, very it's a complete blank canvas. There's lots of possibilities there. And you can take a very sort of methodical approach to that and then sort of only sort of really scratch the surface. But an arts-based approach, you can really follow where the energy is and not necessarily have to sort of justify every step, but sort of jump around, use your artistic license to actually sort of find those bits of interest and those areas that are kind of really interesting until you find, the thing that actually could be the kind of cut-through issue.
Yeah, so we have creative technologists working for the government in UK and designing tools to work with communities or problems for the government.
Yeah, and I was interested in his take on this kind of arts-based approach, which I suppose when we think about policy making or government or the way that these things work, we're not necessarily thinking of them as creative. We see creativity, I think, or some people see creativity as this strictly almost frivolous practice. It's never going to get you somewhere serious. And then movements like this within hierarchical structures where there is an idea oh no, we can take these practices and apply them to problem solving, apply them to policy, apply them to kind of more, drier subject. It's not maybe super radical. I think it has been on the go for a while, but perhaps it's still worth thinking about how these two things intersect, these traditionally very separate ideas. I think it was useful to have this conversation with Brandon.
I felt really comfortable listening to him because I really see the value of validation through governmental organizations, a validation of the process that is this art-based approach. And what I see with art-based approach, this is a problem that is going through artistic research. So it's not only the numbers and statistical data that are there, but people are involved and their emotions and their feelings. And what the transformation also. You cannot put transformative process in statistical data or all the things about feelings, humanity, being a human, being in society, being in community, smaller or bigger. In art-based approach, there is also experiment, a failure.
Yeah, and failure is a really interesting one because that's so complex in government, in policy making. I think that's a huge problem that I don't really know how to solve. I think arts-based approaches could help with it because, of course, we want to see success in our elected officials and the policies that they produce. We hold them to high account, or we should. We should call out things that are badly planned or don't go well. But at the same time, we accept in other walks of life that you can only get to somewhere that looks like success through testing, trying things out, failing, trying again. So, yeah, I think maybe arts-based approaches are exciting for that.
But also not including failure in the policy-making process. It's something that it's not responsible because as a society, we are just swimming in a soup of failure, right? Like a failed policies that are just not having any mirror in a normal life, right?
Yeah.
Or are limiting us, not giving us more chances in life, right? So not including a failure in looking for solutions, this is just not reasonable.
Maybe it's about how we own up to those failures and how we put them in perspective. And I think there is something, again, I think this is the thing that could be really significant about this arts-based approach. The way that we approach creating art, failure is so inherently in the design that it's very easy to take ownership for that failure. And you use it as a knowledge base for what to design next. And also it's about framing it as, exactly as you say, as experimentation. So even sometimes it's not about being like, oh no, this is terrible. We need to fire all these people who tried this and bring in a whole bunch of new people who actually don't know what it is we're talking about because they weren't involved in the initial project. So they're probably just going to make the same mistakes again and again and again. But instead being like, okay, we tried this. This was our prototype. We've learned from that. Yeah, I think it's really curious. Very interested in it.
Also, why we are going into the same solutions that are failing? Why next groups not? Of course, this is the situation when we don't have this like memory of the organization or long-term memory that is passed between workers. This is also a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But why we are testing the same solutions that are not working? This is also a thing.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the things, again, to go back to your why for this podcast, on this very, very low, insignificant level, this is a little bit of that. In the same way that governments keep trying out policies that have been tried in other places and haven't worked and yet they get adopted, or, you know, or have been tried by another government 10 years previously and they haven't worked and then they do them again. I think across the board, this is what effective communication and learning looks like when you understand and you can apply the learning from someone else to your problem. Of course, we still need to try them out in practice, but like there is a whole part that's missing if you don't look at the way that other communities or countries or companies or organizations are trying things.
From governmental problems, we can jump to something that is on the fringe because it's a fringe festival.
Yes. So you have a quote from Nana Gunners, who, what a brilliant person. Let me line up your clip and we'll have a chat about it. You know, what's the flip side of this? I mean, you're asking people to give up a lot of energy and time, including yourself. Is that hard to sustain? Is that something that can be continued off the back of people volunteering their time? Or is that a finite resource that you have to, you know, think about a solution to?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. You always want to pay people for their time, and it's always hard to ask people like, hey, do you want to just do a lot of work for no money?
Yeah,
but you can get some free theater tickets, and it is the hardest thing about it is burnout. So if you have people that have been doing this for a long time and they're putting in a lot of hours, and that's like the core team, like I feel for the current artistic director and all the team. Shout out to you guys, you're doing a great job. But it's like because they are not being paid because it is supported by the city, and it's like, but they're getting like 2 million.
Yeah.
Or something. It's like it's peanuts. It's some people get paid a little bit. Like we can't get away with not paying the technicians that are working like 14 hours a day, and have like a really sought after skill. But then you're like, how do you justify that you pay them but you don't pay the artistic director? Like, it also wouldn't be happening without them. So it's and then where is that line of who should be volunteering completely unpaid and who shouldn't? And it's a very tricky conversation that is had, I think, every year. Like, how do we manage this? And every year, when I was running it, at least, like every year I would say, do we want to do this again next year? Like, we know how much work it is. We know we're probably not going to make much money or any money. But do we still like it? Are we still in a mental space or life space because people's jobs change and or they get children or whatever. Like, there's other factors that come into it, whether you have the time and energy sources. And we would check in, do we want to do it? Yes, we want to do it. Okay, let's do it again. But there is always a feeling that it might stop one day. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a year where people are like, no, we can't do this anymore.
Wow.
I can't even.
It's so burnout and resources and volunteering and who gets paid. What a big conversation and such a vital one in community work. I think Nana is approaching it in exactly the right way, though.
But we are working in culture all our adult lives, and we yet don't have solutions for this shit.
Yeah.
Yet.
Yeah.
And people who are experienced organizers, they are masters in working on small budgets. They are struggling to decide if they want to organize another event like that next year. And when a person like Nana is telling those things, like having narrative in this way, I would love to talk about how Fringe is needed. Mm-hmm. And how it's accelerating arts and inspiring all the people in this small town. But I cannot because of the rage I have thinking about unpaid people. But also, maybe we should talk about the safety of the art world in here, especially when Fringe is the first festival who have big performing arts. And performing arts like aerial silks, mm-hmm. acrobatics. Mm-hmm. This is highly dangerous sport, right? And this is the biggest festival who promotes this type of performing arts and prepare the venue for that. So Tjarnarbíó and silks on the height of 8 meters, 10 meters, right? Mm-hmm. We have people that are doing dangerous things and we have no money. What does it mean? Mm-hmm. There is no security. There is no insurance. If somebody will, let's just think about breaking a leg and not breaking a neck. But this is just outrageous for me,
Yeah, I have no idea what the insurance situation is. I'm sure they have some arrangement with the theatre spaces, which will have insurance. But, it is. I get what you're saying. It's totally precarious physically and, and also just this thing of, going back to what she was saying as well about you can pay the technicians, but you can't pay the artistic director.
Because why?
Yeah. And
because culturally, traditionally in the mm-hmm. society, artistic work is seemingly paid as reproduction work, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
I think it's really interesting when you're right about these people that we know who've worked in culture their whole lives, who are just so advanced at making things happen on a really limited budget. And I think, wow, some of those skills, if bigger institutions or companies ever wanted to have things done on a shoestring or know how to get things done in a very responsive way. Like, you know, that's also the joy of these small endeavors, is that like it's a small team, it's a core team, they're just quick moving, they're fast acting, they can be very reactive. They can be like, do we want to have a festival? Yes, okay, let's make a festival. And each year they're making that decision, as opposed to like if you've got a festival like Airwaves, let's take, I don't know if it's a good example, but I'm sure they have conversations about like, you know, do we want to continue doing this? But that will be in like a 5-year time frame or a 10-year time frame. They'll be planning not just the next year of the festival, but like it will go way in advance. Whereas the opportunity, but the challenge from these small endeavors is that each year you have to have the exhausting conversation of like, have we got this in us? You know, can we apply for more funding yet again? There isn't a guarantee that we will get the same support that we got last year. You know, like she said, people's lives change, people get new jobs, people have children, people move out of the country. So each year you have to evaluate, do we have the resources to do this? But you're then also having the conversation each year of the why. Why are we doing this? Is this right?
But look, Josie, the question is not, do we have resources? Like, they have the answer, there is no resources. Mm-hmm. And the only decision people in culture, in arts, can make is that, do we do it or not? Mm-hmm. Is it going to happen or not? So the only decision you can do is to refuse your participation. And then you have to deal with the guilt of not producing an event who have an audience.
Yeah.
But also, maybe we should think about like pre-funding by the crowd, but still we have a crowd, and arts is not going to be efficient, right?
No.
Like we have this, like art has to be supported by the bigger entity. And leaving art organizers, cultural organizers alone with the decision, are we making an event or not, is just on the government side. Is the city, is the government. So maybe we should push this decision, like, you know, towards somebody else, because we can see and we can hear from this narrative that like the only decision we can make is to refuse our work. Unpaid work, I'm sorry.
No, absolutely. And I feel very torn about this because, and we'll get into this a little bit with the conversation with Atli later on, is I do think that there is huge value in volunteer work and giving your time. I think that there is something quite wonderful about being involved in something that doesn't have governmental or city support in certain cases, because you feel like you're doing something completely outside of anyone else's control or direction. You know, I have been involved in lots of cultural things that have started without sort of institutional support and then have gotten institutional support. And I'm not saying that someone came and was like, hey, you can't put that show on now that we're funding you. But there were certain requirements, certain conversations, things became a bit slower moving because we had to meet funding.
Or the organizers felt pressured.
Exactly. Or, you know, there was suddenly someone from the council on the board, or, you know, and these things I think are important and good. I'm not criticizing them, but you just have to be aware of how these two things are different beasts.
Hey, should we, like, you know,
move it on?
Feed ourselves with Atli, because you did a very nice introduction.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah. Let's put Atli on and talk about it from his perspective.
So I think a very strong thought experiment that you sort of have to go through is that the reason we have these traditions are because the individual isn't important. And he is important as a person of a group. They can be inspiring. They can be sort of tradition bearers, and they can be, you know, notable people. But everybody who is going to take the tradition forwards is going to be inspired, hopefully, by more people than you. So you can't be the person who wrote the poem or wrote the song, but in general, my feeling has been that there aren't really any rock stars. There are excellent performers that can have the status of rock stars, and, you know, the people can analyze their playing techniques, but when you look at them, they are the result of a lot of people who inspired them. And so it's very hard to be sort of the genius.
Yeah, so this doesn't like fully dovetail, but for me, I think the and at other points in the conversation, Atli does talk about, also talks about burnout, talks about trying to maintain things with people volunteering. And I think the whole conversation with him was so fascinating because he's talking about such a specific community, the one that very few people are involved in, but it has complete parallels, complete overlap. But I think this is so interesting, this idea of the individual versus the collective and how they fit in a community setting. And the bit that I had picked out of Nana's conversation that kind of bring them two together is when Nana's talking about when she stepped down from being the artistic director of the Fringe because she was running towards burnout. But she also says, I don't really want to run it for longer than 5 years because then somebody else needs to take over. Otherwise, it becomes my festival. And it's just like, oh, this is Nana runs this. These are how these things are linked to me, is that even the people at the top of the chain who are feeling all of the pressure, who are A, prone to burnout, B, prone to too much ownership. That for me, the joy of community work, community expression comes from that collective feeling. Sometimes I enjoy being the one on stage that everyone claps for and says thank you for organising it. Just as much I enjoy being behind the scenes and watching someone else on stage get the praise or get the acknowledgement, because actually it's like when you tip at a restaurant and then it goes into the pot and it's shared between all the waiters and the chefs and because it's a collective. We've made this together. That is the joy for me. It's not losing my individuality, but it's connecting it with other like-minded people and feeling that, thrill of we made this.
This is a very nice bit from Atli Freyr because he is showing his values here, his motivation to do this kind of thing that is not very popular, it's very specific, but for sure it's bringing people together. And something in between with a large spectrum of ages. Like everybody's thinking about folk music, folk dance as like old people are doing this. But why do we think so? Because we have this memory of growing up in the countryside and then seeing people dancing group dances or something connected with country life. Or black and white photos. Maybe this is it, but it's so alive. I had the chance to see the folk music and music education community in Sibelius Academy in Helsinki.
Oh, wonderful.
And wow. I got educated, I got educated in terms of how alive it is, how inclusive it is, because this is coming to the roots, right? Everybody's dancing with everybody. This is a very modern idea that we should have male-female couples, right? He's also talking about it in the podcast, which is so long and Atli is talking so much. And this is showing how passionate it is about it, about this topic. And perfect organizer. Please don't burn out. Please rest. Don't dance all the time, Atli. But I wrote here a few notes. Art is not happening in a vacuum.
Yeah, that was a really nice point that he made as well. He talks about being a contemporary artist, like you say, despite doing this long-standing tradition, he is doing it in a modern context, and he feels he can only be judged in that modern context. But that what the folk container does is give this, it's not a vacuum, it's a context. It's something to innovate against, off of. And I think that's a lovely way of putting it.
Also, I would put this national context against international context with finding new identity of the group of countries that should be together because they are strong together. So Iceland, Faroe Island, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, those small communities. Greenland. Also with thinking about indigenous people, Sami, and the traditional singing like yoik. And this is how those phenomena can be still alive and like people from the outside of this folk community can be educated about it. And to Nana,
Yes.
I have a point. Being replaceable is healthy,
Yes.
especially as an art organizer or activist or somebody that is exactly working for free or mostly for free or is driven by passion. It's so good to know I am replaceable, because if you are replaceable in the project, that means that this project is really valuable for the community.
And that the community itself is strong.
Yeah.
Because if you are running at a kind of deficit of support, your community is not very well developed and doesn't have the means to sustain something like this. It means that it could be burnout, but it could also just as well be someone gets hit by a truck and has to be in a hospital bed for X amount of weeks. And then how are you going to make things happen unless you have a strong, developed community where people can stand in? And if you have a cult of personality and someone wants to hold control over their position, that's also dangerous, because that's not about the community, it's about that one self. And I think Nana and Atli both express that in different ways, but the issue is the same, actually.
You know, I remember last thing about Nana and Atli combined, because here we can see a strong influence of this passion. But 10 years ago in Poland, there were researchers from Free Slow University of Warsaw, and they made this...
Free Slow University?
Yeah, Wolny Uniwersytet Warszawy. That was like independent research entity. And this group developed the idea of artesol, that there is a special drug, artesol, that those people are on. That's why they are so hyped. And they want to work for free because they are under influence of artesol, the drug that is so popular with art workers and cultural workers. And we see this hype. And maybe we should help them, send them money, money. Money is a solution for this addiction.
Yeah, can help. It certainly helps get things done. Money and people.
Labor law. No
and
work
people.
for free.
No work for free. But I so strongly believe that, and yet I also think that I sometimes struggle to know where to land on this, because I think that, like I say, this collective environment is so important.
But if let's be because this is in this moment, this is harm reduction for all the art workers. This is harm reduction. So it's we just need to work for free is okay. We are doing it for community, but maybe let's specify it in a different way. Okay, there is no money. City has no money. Let's give those people some barters, office space, place for rehearsals. Performing arts need a lot of space for rehearsals because they need those huge areas, big bands, choirs. Where do they rehearse in here? In churches, mostly.
Yeah.
So let's think about it.
Yeah. No, I fully, just to make it totally crystal clear, I fully agree with supporting the arts and to the nth degree. I think what I would love to see, I guess, is life for people to be easier, and the work, better employment options, lower rent, more spaces, cultural spaces, all kinds of spaces, office spaces that are accessible, so that when we choose what we want to do with our volunteer time, when we want to contribute to a community, it doesn't cause burnout. I feel like that.
So the base is covered.
The basics, yeah.
And we don't need to use the arguments, they are finding jobs or having kids.
Yeah, because people can have kids and jobs and still manage to do things like this without burning out if they have better support in other areas of their life.
I want to live in this world.
Yes, me too. Alec,
our precious one.
Alec, our precious one. A good friend of both of us.
Yes.
I think probably the reason we know each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Alec, connecting people.
He is always connecting people. And he talks about you in his interview.
Yes, that was cute.
Yeah, the meeting you in Andremi. Andremi, this house in Reykjavik that is home to a lot of political activism and community activities, but is having a lot of challenges. You've picked out a clip for this. Let's have a listen to it.
Yeah, and that introduced me for the first time to this space called Andremi. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of this. This is interesting. It took me a few months to come back, but I did. I forget if it was a general assembly or exactly what it was. I do remember walking in and feeling very shy, very like, I don't know this space. I don't know who's here. I don't know how things work. But there was the library.
And this is just to set the context as well, this is a free library, mostly kind of, again, books with a political...
Yeah, absolutely. Political bent.
Yes.
Yeah, and so I wandered over there and, it was nice and quiet and you can busy yourself looking at the shelves and everything's fine, and also get a feel for the space. And there are all these books about anarchism and feminism, queer theory, political history. And I was like, oh, wait, I want to read that, and I want to read that, and I want to read that. I want to read that one. So I just right off the bat thought, like, this is pretty cool that this is here. I didn't know that this existed, and it's nice that it exists, that there is such a thing here in Iceland, here in Reykjavik. Okay, so then I got involved. At some point, I connected and I went to a meeting and I got involved in a working group, and I learned some of the lingo, who's going to bottom line this project, who's going to join this working group. And I was so drawn to this feeling of community and the approach that they wanted to take with it, that no one is a boss. We don't want someone to be in charge. We're going to do it together. Mm-hmm. And it felt like, kind of... the metaphor that comes to mind is too dramatic, but like walking out of the desert. I felt like I'd carried a developing feeling of injustice with the world, anger over worsening inequality, environmental collapse, blatant examples of transphobia, queerphobia, racism, and feeling like I didn't know who I could talk to. I felt like if I brought some of these things up in other parts of my life, people were like, and I think this gets to your, a certain privileged class being like, there might be a sort of like, those things suck, but like they don't actually materially affect me. And so, so I just didn't, I didn't have a space for all of these things I was feeling. And I guess it was lonely in a way. And I came into Andremi and I connected with these people, and suddenly it was like, oh no, you are here. And I won't even say we're on the same page, but at least we're reading the same book.
This is exactly it. I choose this bit because I don't want to talk about problems of the community I am not actively participating in. And I think those are their in-house problems. And I don't want to be an expert in this issue. I picked this because it shows this is a case story, a case of the bravery of a person who entered the unknown world, something that was completely unfamiliar, and they found belonging in the things that they like. So I'm entering the space, everything is foreign, everything is alien, but I see those books and I can read. And I think this is a beautiful story of a need of belonging, being in a new place which we can treat globally. It's a new country, it's a new community, it's a new students community, but you are here and you don't have your own space, and then you are entering one, and step by step you start to own it. So I admire the bravery of conquering new worlds that are foreign, finding familiar places, and this honesty of this narrative, because we don't need to dig deep here. It's just
it's right there,
yeah.
and there's so much. And I think Alec is a very brave person. I think sometimes maybe it's easier in some ways for immigrants when they move to a new place. My only example for this really is Iceland. I've moved to new places within Scotland, but then you still have some similar cultural context. But once you take that leap and everything is foreign to you anyway, I think when I first came here anyway, I don't know what it was like for you, but I think because everything was already new and strange, it was easier to take inroads into a new community like this, or a new type of community that I hadn't been involved in before, because I had to make friends. Everything was new. Everything was uncomfortable. So you just kind of lean into that. Now, in my life in Iceland, much more settled, much more connected, starting with a totally new community here would be daunting in a way that it would be out of context in some ways with my life, or the way that my life exists. So I think there is something to that about people often find one of these new communities when they first move to a new place. But yeah, there's so much here.
So maybe we could use it as an encouragement and some creative activity that we can propose, from our migrant perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe it's also reinventing this kind of state and mood for everybody. I would encourage our listeners to take a step to some foreign land that can be just maybe it's your local board. Maybe in the building that you live in, there is a board that is meeting every sometime, maybe every 6 months. What kind of people you're gonna meet there? And maybe it will be very creative and inspiring to expose yourself to these different ideas, different mood, different rules that some community have. And in the beginning, you can look at it from the distance and as somebody out of the space and those rules, and then maybe you can adapt some that are working for you, or just try to familiarize those new areas for yourself.
I totally agree. I think that's a great thing to encourage people to do. Something that I don't think I have found out through the span of these conversations that I still wonder about is why some people want to give their time and energy to community endeavors and some people don't, but still want to be involved, still want to reap the benefits of it. Even somewhere like Hafnarhouse, where we're based, the people who are on the board of the Members Association here are the same people who are organising the concerts, are the same people who are running the print shop. They are the doers, they are the connectors, they are a type of person. And then they are more prone to burnout because they want to be involved in all of these different communities and they're trying to keep them all afloat at once. Whereas there are loads of our peers here who are wonderful and involved in one thing or another, but wouldn't take the step forward to be on a board or a working group or a committee. They are community members, glad community members. I'm not, coming down hard on anyone in particular here, but I just haven't figured out what it is that makes someone step up into this organizing space and someone hold back. Maybe it's a confidence thing. Maybe if I grew up in a household where this was very normal. My parents were each on a board of something at all times. It was kind of almost like they had these kind of rules for a living. It's like you always must be donating to a charity when you have the means to. You always must be contributing to a community organization, be on a board, be on something. Not too much, don't burn yourself out, but this is almost like a civic duty. So maybe that's why I kind of grew up with that instilled in me. But yeah, you have your Alex and your Atleys and your Nanas and so on. And then you have other people. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I'm thinking about housekeeping and ownership. And I just have this question in my head. Would you do the housekeeping in the house that it's not yours?
Interesting.
And I think all of those organizers or people who are taking on the initiative, taking on some responsibility, they have increased feeling of this is mine. I want to make it mine. I want it to work for me. I feel that I represent myself or a group who thinks alike. And I have rights to the space I am co-creating. And this is it.
This is it. Totally. Yeah, But I want to end on Alex's discussion about like when that feels good, because I think he nails it in this. And I was very mean to him when he was saying, oh, it's too dramatic a phrase, but, you know, it felt like walking out the desert. And then I made that the title of the episode because it's so wonderful, an image. And the other one, the quote ends on, I won't even say we're on the same page, but at least we're reading from the same book. And I was debating between these two quotes to make the title of the episode, because isn't that such a good feeling when you find people and you're like, oh, I didn't even know I was looking for you, but here we are, and let's do something together. Wow, that's so amazing.
We are a crowd. We are not the same, but we are going in the same direction now.
Yes. We're getting in the vehicle together.
Yeah.
To use Arnar's.
We are fellow travelers.
Fellow travelers.
Now on the same travel. Later, maybe we will pick up like, you know, other destinations. But still, now we have this one ticket.
Absolutely.
Love it.
Love it. Thanks so much for coming and chatting.
Thank you. I really love this like beta analysis of the material. I think more people should do that, because this is an opportunity to reflect on what we did so far and where this is going and what do we want to do and why.
Absolutely. And on that note, is there anything that you want to talk about that you're up to at the moment with East of Moon or otherwise? You have this game that we've kind of mentioned in an article online.
Oh.
Do you want to maybe mention a bit about that on the podcast?
Yeah, you inspired me, because so much content is being produced by East of Moon these days that I'm like, oh, I need to write a report of what I am doing right now. So I am still experimenting with translating solidarity unionism tactics to the art field or art activities, because I want arts to be a little bit more structured, so it feels easier to organize successful in a way that, like, you know, it's satisfying and it's happening events. So you can find on the website the article, like my interpretation of direct action for the purpose of creating an artistic intervention. And that was my take on anthropological methods in arts.
I'll put a link to it in the show notes so people can find it.
So that was it. And yeah, I was testing again my small game. It's a small role-play game about cleaning a hostel on Snæfellsnes Peninsula. And I was inspired by Maja Luxemburg, a Polish artist that had a residency in Theater 21. And we are also having some articles on that on our webpage. Yeah. Please check it out.
Please do. There's one more episode of Fellow Travelers, of this sort of season, I guess you'd call it, the Fellow Travelers to come. And that is an interview with the infamous Arnar Sigurðsson.
Oh, wow.
Where
who's that?
Who is that? Who's that guy? You'll finally find out what East of Moon is and what it's all about and where it's come from. And we've already recorded it, actually, and it's a great conversation.
Wow, beautiful.
So look out for that. And for now, thank you so much for joining me, Anna. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, and see you on Innovation Week soon.
Absolutely.